Make this a little closer.
It's
I,
beautiful. It's
it's okay the
perfect.
way it is.
Yeah,
All
it's
right. Okay.
perfect.
All right.
Okay, well, welcome. I am calling you Lana
Yeah.
and know you as Shakta,
Yeah. That's all fine.
holding all of it.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have this conversation today. You have made such an impact on so many lives for so many years.
Oh, well, thank you for that.
I just want to pause and bask and savor you for a minute. Your dedication to healing and wholeness for all ages, and what a light you have been in the world and continue to be. Continue to
Thank you.
be. So, we're friends on Facebook, and one of the things I noticed this year was a name shift or a name evolution. And I was going through that process myself. Pleasance is my given birth name. It's not a spiritual name. I mean, or it totally is a spiritual name, depending on how you look at birth names. But I'm in a Hebrew priestess training program for Jewish leadership and clergy, female feminine Jewish leadership and clergy. And we are invited to expand our definition of naming. So I've been in this naming process and exploration. So when I saw you write and talk about changing your name, I said, oh, that's so beautiful. I want to talk about that. And then really was thinking a little bit deeper about some of the stuff that's come out about the lineages that we have loved in different ways and the shifts and changes. And I so deeply respect your work and activism in the world. So that's why I wanted to invite you on today to talk about all of those things.
Thank you. Well, I
So
guess
where do you want to start?
we could
Yeah.
start with the personal transformation. I
Yes.
think that the theme that I thought of when I thought about talking with you today, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
It's really special. Um, is transformation, because every piece of the theme of every piece that I can think of is transformation. And my personal transformation also has to do with the name change. So I guess that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Um, I had a name as a child that I had until I was 26 or 27, and I became very deeply involved in the Kundalini community. And when I say deeply involved, like it wasn't like just taking yoga classes. It was you lived the life. You lived in ashram. You lived in community. You you slept, ate, and breathed yoga teachings all the time. So we were encouraged in that time to make the name change legal. So the way that worked in the Kundalini is if you take the highest Sikh vows, you take the name Khalsa. So my name was Khalsa before I married my husband, and his name was Khalsa too. So we didn't take each other's names. We already each had those names, right? And then the middle name was Kaur, and in the Sikh path, which is woven into the Kundalini community, the
Mm-hmm.
Sikh path, Kaur and Khalsa. Khalsa is the highest Sikh vows. Kaur means it denotes female. The men have Singh, Singh.
Mm-hmm.
So then the first name is like your personal name, and it has to do with your destiny, what you're here to do. And that name was given by Yogi Bhajan, who I met him personally, because in those days you would meet with him personally. After some decades, you just got your name like through an email or through, but he still, well, when he was alive, he would intuit what your spiritual name was. And he gave me the name Shakta. And Shakta is a unusual version of Shakti. So when I first got it, I was a little insecure about it because all these people who knew more about the path than me would say, like, "Oh, are you sure it's not Shakti?" And I'm like, "No, look, he wrote it. It's right here." You know. And then I found out that it was sort of the masculine version of Shakti, but it was still Shakti. So it was the feminine, divine, creative energy, but with this masculine sort of, I thought of projection. It
Mm.
even sounds different. Shakta, Shakti. They
Mhm.
sound pretty different from each
Mhm.
other in the way that they sound. So anyway, I got used to my name and I started to actually like it. And then I started to live it. What I felt was, growing up, I was a pretty daydreamy child.
Mm.
Uh, I was very philosophical. I thought a lot. I thought about deep things. I didn't usually express that to my family very much, but I
Mm.
thought about deep things. And then I got this name. And then in the path of Kundalini Yoga, being a doer is very important. Like, you didn't just meditate all day, you cooked, you catered things, you worked in
Mhm.
natural foods, you
Mhm.
taught a lot of yoga classes, you were up at 4 o'clock in the morning until like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, when you would just fall into bed, exhausted. So it was a very much of a doer path, and Yogi
Mhm.
Bhajan's themes were like um, to be assertive. I think that that was part
Mm.
of the thing. Be strong, be assertive. And I picked up on that little by little over the years that I was strongly in that path, which was about 27 years of being very strongly in that path. And I started to also follow in the 80s, um, the Abraham work, which
Mm.
was about like follow your bliss, follow what makes you happy.
Mhm.
And I put those two together. And to me, it was like, well, children make me happy.
Mm.
So I'm going to be around children. And then it was yoga makes me happy. So I'm going to bring yoga to children.
Mm.
So it's kind of like another part of my evolution. I
Mm.
think that the I know for sure that the main thing about children was, I opened my eyes to children and saw that they were already like these amazing little gurus. So why don't we just help them stay that way? Why do we have to lose this as we
Yeah.
grow older? Why do we have to be so influenced by adults who have totally forgotten who they are?
Mm.
So that was like I don't like to call it a mission. It sounds too religious, but it was my path. That was my path for all these years.
Yeah.
And I would say that that's still my path. But what happened was that Abraham work came in, and that expanded me in a certain way. And
Mhm.
then another channel teacher named Bashar
Mhm.
also was very powerful change for me in the 80s. And then I sort of put it away in the 90s. I had a child. My husband and I wanted to have a child for 14 years of marriage, and nothing happened. But we did get to raise two other children, each for 3 years. And that plus the fact that I had a Montessori school in
Yeah.
Baltimore. I had that for like 6 or 8 years. That could put me in the realm of children a lot. And there was always
Yeah.
children in the ashram, and I was a very much called upon auntie in the ashram. So
Mm.
I was around children all the time, but it was a big heartache for me that I was not able to have children. I did not even have a miscarriage. There was a big zero. We even had, like, I had some surgery to a tuboplasty because maybe the fallopian tubes weren't catching the egg, etc. But they told me that most the best chances for that happening would be in the next 2 years after having it. Still nothing happened. And then at this one point, I think it was 1990, um, my husband, who's very even tempered, very peaceful guy, I remember I was crying because I got my period. And he just, like, he was holding some keys in his hand, and he just threw them across the room, which was completely out of character for him. And he goes like, damn it, we're not going to live like this. And he wrote this letter to Yogi Bhajan. And I don't want to say that Yogi Bhajan did anything. I just want to say that that was part of our process, was writing
Yeah.
to Yogi Bhajan
Okay.
and saying, we just deeply want to have a child, and we would appreciate some kind of help. It's just not happening. And it wasn't like I didn't talk with him about this before, because in those days you could meet with Yogi Bhajan. He was somewhat available, let's say, when he
Yeah.
would come to visit different ashrams and things, or you'd go to see him somewhere. So the way this story went was that in a month, we got a, I remember, I think a month, we got a message from one of his secretaries that said, he wants you to come to Los Angeles. So I thought, oh gosh, I don't want to go to Los Angeles, but okay, I'll do it because this is the most important thing to me right now, and I'll just do
Mhm.
it. So I got there, and he goes to me, "You go see Dr. Saram, who is this pretty well-known 3HO Kundalini Yoga doctor. He's on Dr. Oz sometimes and things
Mm.
like that.
Okay.
He wanted me to go see him, and it took me 2 weeks to get an appointment. So I was staying in Los Angeles. Well, within those 2 weeks, I missed my period and I started to feel sick. But my brain was so conditioned to not
Mhm.
want to hope anything that it just went like, oh, it's a smog. It's,
Yeah.
it's not what
Travel.
you think,
Yeah.
it's a travel, it's a smog, it's not, but when I did go in for my infertility appointment, I said, I'm here for infertility, but I think you should also give me a pregnancy test, and then they did.
Mhm.
And I just remember when I got the call, I was so
Mm.
nervous. So, like, I just so
Mm.
much didn't want to be disappointed. And I was so conflicted inside, like wanting to hope and then not wanting to be disappointed. And the interesting thing was that because I meditated a lot over the years, I could tell what my brain was doing. I was self-aware enough.
Mhm.
So I get this phone call and they say, "Congratulations, you're pregnant." And my brain literally sputtered. My brain did not know what to do. My brain went like, but you mean like I don't need to want that anymore? You mean I
Mm.
don't need to keep going in this direction anymore? Because it had such a habit of whatever 12, 13 years of just being on this track. It didn't actually really know what to do
Mm.
when that happened. So then I called my husband because he wasn't there with me, and we just cried because and I was 40 at the time. My husband's 45, and it was just such a special thing, such a really special thing. And then I remember going to Yogi Bhajan and kind of he had heard and I had my palms together and he just goes like, "No, I didn't do anything, and don't say I did anything. You give this to Guru Ram Das," because for him, Guru Ram Das was like his guidance. And I think he didn't want a whole bunch of women coming up and begging him, so he, that was his response to that. And I feel like now when I look back on it, I feel like everything, the timing was just right. I don't understand why it was the way it was. Perhaps even the soul who came to us,
Mm.
Ramdas, perhaps he needed that time. Perhaps
Mm.
he needed to be born in 1991. I mean, I have no idea what the
Right.
whole bigger picture is of this.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was the way that
Mm.
happened. And then we thought, well, oh, maybe we can have more children. But then again, big zero. So it was just like there it was the one time, and
Mm.
it was very, very good. And during that time period, which was the 90s, that's where I started really focusing on children's yoga in the world. And I
Yeah.
wrote, my son was pretty young and I didn't
Mm.
want to work full time, but I thought that, okay, well, at least I can teach yoga,
Yeah.
to kids. So I went
Yeah.
to this Montessori school or that one. And, I got a lot of experience just being the traveling yoga teacher at
Yeah.
that time. And then people said, well, why don't you write a book? And I wrote the Fly Like a
Fly.
Butterfly book.
Isn't he
uh,
in Fly Like a Butterfly too? The
he's
pictures of
on the
him. I
cover.
remember that. I
Yeah,
know.
he's on, and
Fly like a
he was,
butterfly, fly
yeah,
like a butterfly.
he's one of the kids in there,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
because he
remember
did
that.
yoga since he was born,
Yeah.
and so that was really fun. And even like the publisher, they said, "Oh, we want this picture on the cover where he was like doing frog jumps and he was like
Yeah.
really in a freedom pose of jumping
Yeah.
up in the air and looking so good." And I said, "Well, are you sure you don't want one of the kids without turbans?" And they go,
Yeah.
"No, no, we want this picture on the cover." So I thought, well, that's interesting. So all this
Yeah.
time I was really, in the identity of the Sikh path with the
Yeah.
white turban, with the
Yeah.
whole white clothing, with the uncut hair, with all
Mm-hmm.
the things that are part of the Sikh path,
Mm-hmm.
and 3HO Yogi Bhajan say teachings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's it's a big mix up there of like what's Sikh, what's Yogi Bhajan. He kind of he kind of put everything together in a way that was okay for me for quite a long time and still is okay for a lot of people. So what happened in the late 90s uh, is that I started traveling and teaching
Mhm,
radiant child yoga. I
mhm,
developed that and I
mhm,
was teaching it. So that got me traveling around. And what that did was it took me out of the isolation of the ashram
mm.
living, and it
Mhm,
it let me see like, oh, everybody is got this amazing consciousness, and I could appreciate so many
mm.
things about everyone. And I think the Abraham work really helped me with that because it's a lot about finding something to appreciate and to
Yeah,
just being in that
yeah,
kind of space,
yeah.
and just
Mm,
seeing the gifts that everything in life
mm,
gives you,
mm.
and seeing the gifts that other people have. So as part of that, I kept traveling. And then around 2003, some of my students said to me, we want to do what you do. Can you train us to be
Yeah,
trainers for your program? And that was a big deal for me because I didn't want to like Patanjali codified, right? The
yeah,
yoga teach, but I didn't want to codify this work. I
yeah.
wanted it to be pretty free moving, but at the same time, it did have certain essential things in it. So I found a balance with that. And then I had to go through my own um, attachment to
Mm.
it. Like, oh, my trainers don't teach it.
Yeah,
Me, oh, and I'm a Virgo with lots of
yeah.
planets in Virgo. Virgos were very like things have to be just so. Okay,
Mm.
so I've been working with that my whole life. Hmm. But in Vedic,
Mhm,
I'm Leo, so I think I got a lot of Leo too.
mhm.
So anyway, that started a whole new phase of Radiant Child,
Mhm,
and as part of that, in the new millennium, I got more deeply into Eckhart Tolle work. I
mhm,
picked up this book, The Power of Now, when it first came out, and
mhm,
nobody had heard of it.
mhm,
I just made a beeline for it in the
mhm,
store. When I
mhm,
went to Barnes and Noble, I was like,
mhm,
oh my gosh, that's my book. And I just took it to heart. That plus Krishnamurti's work, which is a
mhm,
really basically like you're not this identity you think you
mhm,
are. You're
mhm,
just energy. You're just
mhm,
a flow of energy. And
mhm,
I got into that very deeply. And then one more book really um, helped me so much, which is a very little known book called The Anatomy of Miracles.
mm,
And this book was by somebody in the path, Subhag Khalsa,
mhm,
and he was writing it about the healing work that can be done, which is called Satnam Rasayan. It's part of Kundalini Yoga,
mhm,
which is you place your hand on someone, and then you notice sensations as they arise, and you do get to a place of completely no one there, and that's when the
mm,
healing happens.
mm,
So I wasn't interested in doing healing work on people. That's never been my path. I'm really an educator,
mhm,
and I've never been attracted to doing hands-on healing work.
mhm,
But I did use this book for my own purpose to become present to myself in every moment. And I worked with that very, very deeply.
mm,
And then I worked very deeply with the Bashar work as well, which is it's an extraterrestrial energy. That's the way they identify
mhm,
as, but basically it's just all this universal wisdom coming
mhm,
through
mhm,
a person named Daryl Anka. So it's a lot like the Abraham work as
mhm.
well. And you can take it or leave it with the other parts, but mostly the parts about the how to really completely notice what your mind is doing and
Mm,
then work with that has been the key to everything, and the key to the big changes where I did change from being part of the Kundalini path exclusively and have that as my identity. And I believe that took about 8 years. So from about 2001 to
mm,
2008, I was experimenting. I started cutting my hair just like the split ends like that much off. And it was like, you can't believe how hard that is if you
Yeah.
have been in a path
Yeah.
in which hair is like your sacred energy and you never,
Mm.
but you always wear it up and you always cover it. And some parts of that aren't very healthy for your hair either. So,
Yeah.
there were, I
Yeah.
have friends who were kind of getting bald spots from that tight place of tying right here. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to look at all of this. And at the point where I felt that the outward form was going to change, which is around 2007 or 8, I had a conversation with my husband because we were very on track with all the stuff, Abraham,
Yeah.
Shar, the present moment awareness work, the Eckhart Tolle work. We were on board with all of that. But he was not on board so much with the part where I would sometimes criticize Yogi Bhajan or
Mm.
criticize this mindset of going along like sheep to about things. I had sometimes I can't keep my big mouth shut. Okay, let's just say. So there were times when
Good.
I know,
Let's
but
just say good.
I
Thank
know, but
goddess.
there's time and place for some of
Yeah.
this, right?
Yeah.
Especially with him. Okay.
Yeah.
So around 2008, I told him I was going to change the outward form
Okay.
and I was going to cut my hair because the hair was like, I have
Mhm.
very lightweight, fluffy hair that's wavy and does its own thing. It
Mhm.
doesn't do very well when it's really long. It has ponytail that big, right? Because it's not a lot of
Mhm.
hair and
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
like I said, really wavy and does its own thing. So I knew what looked good on me, and it was layered hair. And I'm like, that's what I'm going to do, folks.
And what'd he say?
He was pretty upset, and we had to work with
Mm.
that. I mean, even though I had changed and changed, by
Mm.
the time I got to like putting on turban out of obligation, that didn't have integrity for me. And when
Mhm.
I got to that point where it didn't have integrity, I just knew, okay, this boat is going to rock. I hope it doesn't tip over. I don't
Yeah.
know, because that has happened many times within this path where people got divorced because one of them left the Dharma. That's the term,
Yeah.
left the Dharma. Right. So, anyway, and I had heard things about Yogi Bhajan too, and so did he. But we didn't know for sure. I mean, we kind of knew, but we didn't certainly know the extent. We only knew, like, oh, maybe he had sex with his secretaries. Maybe, w- a lot of people were wondering, but anyway, that was that time period. And then finally, my husband is a deep meditator, and he goes, all right, give me some time. And I just had to allow him, like, I got this guidance to just be receptive to him and just have a soft silence around him and not push him. Because
Mm.
that's the part that
Mm.
really doesn't go well in our relationship is
Mhm.
I tend to uh, get very excited or about something and know
Mhm.
that
And
that's it.
put yeah.
I'll be too pushy with him, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he's not that type, and it doesn't work well
Mm.
with him, and he just retreats when I do that. So
Yeah.
in this case, I tried my best with it, and I do remember a couple of things that were outstanding in our conversations during that time. It was about 3 or 4 months of him pretty much being in his cave, and then every once in a while we'd just hang out together. We might even lie together on the bed and
Mhm.
talk and things like that. There were two things that I remember saying, and this really came out of the Abraham work too, and that was, the first one was to see it in a positive way. What are we learning here?
Mhm.
How can
Mhm.
we view this differently? And I remember saying to him, this gives us the opportunity to see what our marriage is based on. This gives us the opportunity to see if our
Mhm.
marriage is just based on this Dharma because we met on the path. He was already on it. And then I came in, and that's all we ever knew. I said, this gives us the opportunity to
Yeah.
see, is our marriage based on a Dharma, or is our marriage based on love, the love we have for each other?
Yeah.
And that gave us something to meditate on. We didn't try to answer it right then.
Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
it was a really very astute time period where he was in his space, I was in my space, and we were moving through our stuff like separately, but then we'd come back together and talk a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I remember saying was, and this was further on the line too, maybe closer to the time where those 3 or 4 months were up, I said, and this is what I call the positive what if. And this is something I teach in a course called Happily Ever Now. And this one is definitely from the Abraham work, which is, instead of, like, a lot of times we think of, oh gosh, what if I get coronavirus?
Yeah.
What if,
Yeah.
what if a tree falls on my house? I don't know. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's that,
Yeah.
but there's a positive what if. And so the
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
what if on this was like,
Love that.
what if,
Mm.
you can be you and I
Mhm.
can be
Mhm.
me, and
Mm.
we can find our love together? What
Mhm.
if, and what
Yeah.
that does for me is it takes me to that new place.
Yeah.
It takes me to that vision. And I could feel that he felt it too. What if you could be you and I could be me, and
Yeah.
we could find our, I said, I want to learn that. That to me is unconditional love. You don't have to be anything for me. I don't have to be anything for you.
Mm.
And we've been working on that ever since. So it's not an easy thing. It's not, but it gets
Mm.
easier as we practice it. So what happened at the end of that time period is we are lying on the bed together, and he just said to me, um, so I'm ready. I'm ready. He said, those weren't his exact words. His words were like, I can't quite remember them right this moment, but it was to the effect as like,
I
I'm good
hear
with
you.
this.
Yeah.
I'm good with this. And I said to him, do you want to talk about it? And he goes,
Yeah.
no, I worked it out. I'm good with
Yeah.
it. And then he and I went to this spa like about 3 weeks later. I still waited. Because I just wasn't sure still. I just wanted it to really be. And our son was okay with all of it. He already could see through all of this stuff, through all
How old
this.
was he at this time?
He was, I think, 17.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
so he was smelling. They're
Yeah.
good. They
And
yeah, got it.
he's
Yeah.
like,
Why are you doing that,
he
Mom?
already could see through all
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
dharma
Yeah.
stuff, and that
Yeah.
by then he
Yeah.
was like, he's
Yeah.
always been that way.
Yeah.
And the only thing he once said to me though was, can't you just like wear the turban anyway? And I knew that why he was saying that is he didn't want me and his father to break up. He
Yeah.
didn't care about the
Yeah.
turban.
Yeah.
He just didn't want all
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
discord and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
But then I could
Mm.
tell he was going like, I'm going to cut my hair too. So you go ahead,
Yeah.
that's sort of where he was at. So then we went to this spa, this place that's, of course, it's not open now, but it's this great Korean spa that's out
Spa
in,
one Spaville.
yeah,
No, what's it
yeah,
called? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that
I
place.
love that place.
Me
Yeah.
too. And we're there and we're just having a good time. And then upstairs they have a beauty salon,
Yeah.
right? And there's all these pictures of different haircuts. And he goes to me, which one do you want?
Mm.
How do you want to get your hair cut like? And I knew he was saying, okay, I'm all right.
Yeah.
You go ahead now. I'm okay. I'm okay with it. And then when I got my hair cut, it was about to here. And then I came in the door and my son, just bless his heart, he goes like, oh, Mama's home. Papa, look, she doesn't look that different. Do you think?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
she
He's
looks that
trying to
different.
keep you connected and together.
you
Sweetie.
you can't believe how much energy
Yeah.
there is around hair
Oh,
in
oh
this
yeah.
in
Yeah.
this path.
Yeah.
So anyway, it keeps getting shorter and shorter,
Yeah.
but okay. And then I just let it go to its
Oh,
whole natural.
I love it.
It does
Yeah.
its own thing.
Yeah.
So that's about the hair. And
Oh
then I
man.
sent a message to all our friends in our community here in
Yeah.
Herndon. And I let them know. And most of the ones that were really close with me, they're all were totally fine. And then some of the ones that weren't, they just didn't say anything. They just like
Yeah.
left it alone.
Yeah.
So I went through years of a little bit in one world, a little bit in the other world, but I felt so much freedom. And I think that I'm people are different. One thing that I've noticed about people is they have, and might be too simplistic here, but there are people who seem like they're more security seekers, and so they will
Mm,
look for ways that
yeah.
gives them security. But I've always been a freedom seeker, and
I
I
love
I'm like a person
that.
who really I really hate to be like fenced in, and
Yeah.
that's harder for me than
Mm,
the security issue. Like I will let go of security because because I need freedom. And but also
Mm.
I have a lot of security in my life. I have a security type guy in my guy
Right.
is security oriented,
Right.
right?
Right.
So in a way that allows me
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
of that ability. But I
Yeah.
think I also help him to be more freedom
Yeah.
seeking,
Yeah.
so kind of we go back and forth a little bit that way. So he's
Wow.
grown and changed so much from me changing.
Okay.
And then and so that like we've been living our lives and being more aware of when like I get too critical of him, like, oh, you're brainwashed about blah, blah, blah. Or he gets critical of me about something. Like at first he was like, I could tell he was like having a hard time with my hair. And I said, what is it? What's going on? And he goes like, well, you just remind me of like your old hippie days, when you had all that. And I'm like, and instead of getting angry, it was good that he felt that he could be honest with me.
Yeah.
I would have a tendency to get a little angry because I run that way rather
Yeah.
than sadness. I run toward anger. But instead, I knew what he meant. And I said, I know. I said, just give me some time because I haven't had my hair for so
Yeah.
long. I don't know what to do with it. I don't exactly know how to take care of it. And,
Yeah.
then I learned about like hot rollers and stuff like that. Anyway, it's been a journey.
So is he still in it? So where are you now
Well,
with,
where we are now is so I made
especially
friends.
with everything that came out? So people who are
Yeah.
listening may not, some people who listen are not part of
They
the
might not
Kundalini
know all of
path.
this. Yeah.
So without being too like attacky or personal, like just what's the big
Right.
picture of what's been going on?
All right. So I was moving away from this path in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of like the different belief systems that it
Yeah.
had, and so has he been doing
Okay.
that, and really questioning them. Well, is that absolutely true? Do I, Byron Katie's work? Can
Yeah.
I actually absolutely
Yeah.
know this is
Yeah.
true? Where
Yeah.
would I be without that thought? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I made friends on Facebook with Pamela Dyson, who used
Mm-hmm.
to be Premka. And when she was Premka, I
Yeah.
was a little peon in the ashram, and she was almost as important as Yogi Bhajan himself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she came to our Baltimore ashram. Everything, she was treated that way, right? So
Yeah.
that's all
Yeah.
I knew of her. And then
Yeah.
I knew she left a path. I didn't know anything about it. And then her and I became friends. And I started to be part of a group of people who were used to be in 3HO. And we would have some Zoom calls. So I got to know her better. And then she mentioned her book was coming out last January. So when
Mm-hmm.
the book came out, I got
Yeah.
it like the first day it was available. I read the entire thing. And not only did I not know most of the stuff that was in that book, which was about having sex with the
Yeah.
secretaries and
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
but I also did recognize the manipulative behavior. And I was heartened actually to see that someone was seeing this and calling it out. It
Yeah.
was it was actually very heartening to me. But much of it was, I think for my mind, I could feel my mind was very confused. Like
Mm,
it was turning everything topsy turvy. I think I read it twice, right, one back to back.
mm-hmm.
And then what happened was that sparked a Facebook page,
Yeah.
and in the Facebook page, uh, other women started coming forward because they felt they
Yeah.
took courage from
Yeah.
Pamela's book, and they
Yeah.
start coming forward. And the things that they came out with were much even worse than
Yeah.
what was in the book.
Yeah.
And one of the people in there was my Savadar, and I'll tell you what that means. It means someone who serves for a capacity. When the 40 days after my son was born in this path, there's a
Mm-hmm.
40-day Savadar,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them was a young woman who wrote her story about what happened with Yogi Bhajan. And so I knew her personally. And when I saw that, I knew there was no way she was lying.
Yeah.
I knew that that was true,
Yeah.
that this experience she had with him. And plus, even the way she described it, his mannerisms, I knew that that's exactly how he would talk and exactly how it would look, because I knew
Yeah.
him well enough for that. So that started a really big uh, volcanic eruption within this path. And I'm very glad and thankful that there was this AOB report. Um, and the report itself was extremely difficult to read. It was beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. Like
Mhm.
in reading it, you just felt like so dirty and disgusted.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
horrible. And it was all perpetrated mostly on younger women who
Yeah.
just wanted to be part of this, with sometimes older women knowing about all of this happening. So
Yeah.
it's been really something. Now I've already been not really part of this path for a long time. And so I'm in a different category than people who were just rudely
Yeah.
woken
Yeah.
up by
Yeah.
this whole thing happening. And so there are some people even within the group here in Herndon who just refusing to believe it. And then there's a lot of people who really know that this is accurate and this happened. And so there's just a little bit more of this for me, which is
Mm.
I had to look at how this affected my work, my radiant child work, because it's based in Kundalini yoga, even
Yeah.
though because
Yeah.
of all the trainers, there's so much
Yeah.
influence of other types of yoga in it
Yeah.
now, which
Yeah.
is wonderful.
Yeah.
Because Kundalini yoga is very insular. You
Yeah.
know, it's sort of like it's we not really paying attention to what other yogis are doing anywhere.
Yeah.
It's very much like its own thing,
Mm.
which does have its advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
So anyway, then the next thing that happened with that is that
Mm.
so when the book came out, and when I even read some of the things on these Facebook pages, I thought, okay, I don't understand this. This is a huge paradox. This person has all this genius and talent and amazing gifts to share with his teachings, and he's this awful person, and he's this horrible sexual predator, deviant, and manipulator. So how do I put those two things together? And at first it was like, well, I'm just going to take what I like of the yoga, and I'm not going to relate it back to him at all. I'm not going to say Yogi Bhajan says this or anything like that. So I kept that way for a while. But then someone contacted me who was abused as a child, and she told me her whole story and how it has affected her as an adult, and how it has really almost ruined her life. And when I was finished with that, I felt numb. I actually took notes because I wanted to remember what she was saying. And I just sat there and I just knew that I could have nothing at all to do with Kundalini Yoga now. And that's so I called together all of the trainers and I
Yeah.
said, you all don't have the same relationship as I do. And so I
Yeah.
understand that some of you have found Kundalini Yoga without Yogi Bhajan, without having any relationship to Yogi Bhajan, and you love it and it helps you. I am not going to make any dictates here. I know that I
Yeah.
am not going to include Kundalini Yoga when I teach Radiant Child, but I'm not saying that you cannot,
Right.
because I honor that everybody has their own relationship to this. And so that's the way we left it within Radiant Child. In the actual manual itself, it does have a few references to Kundalini Yoga, that this is a Kundalini Yoga practice, or Satanama, which is like a
Yeah.
famous,
Yeah.
and they've done studies on that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it helps your memory and
Yeah.
all of that. So I'd say that there's still a little bit in there, but there's definitely no, it's definitely, as we call it, a guru free zone.
Yeah.
It doesn't have
Yeah.
any of that. And I'm pretty okay with where it's at. Um, but I am working with this young woman, and her and I are friends, and we talk on the phone. And I actually started a GoFundMe page for her
Mm.
because so much therapy has taken up so much of her money. And
Yes.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
there's that too. So
Yeah.
I feel like I want to help make things right. I mean, I was so involved in children. I was called Mrs. Rogers of 3HO because I
Yeah.
worked at the children's camps, and
Yeah.
we raised some children ourselves for
Yeah.
periods of time. And I was so involved with children, and yet, so like that crossed the line for me. I couldn't tolerate that. There was no way that I was going to be able to tolerate that. And so that's where my husband teaches Kundalini yoga. He just does it his own way now, and he feels more
Yeah.
freedom to bring in other things.
Yeah.
So that's him, and this is me, and
Yeah.
that's how it is.
And when did you officially change your name or release the Shakta piece? What was that process like?
Well, for a long time, I was thinking of changing Khalsa because I am no longer a Khalsa. I don't
Yeah.
relate to that as my
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
And I was going to keep Shakta. But then when all this came out of Yogi Bhajan, I thought there were two things. One was sort of like I was pushing it away a bit, like
Yeah.
I don't want that name. He gave me that name. But I think beyond that, it was my neutral mind felt that he was that phase of my life was over, and that name
Mm-hmm.
reflected it. In a
Mm-hmm.
way, 1/3 of my life was my birth name, April Ann Myers. Okay, and then 1/3 of my life was Shakta
Mm.
Karkasa, and then for about the past 10 years, I've been wanting to change my name but didn't take it on.
Yeah.
So this last third of my life, I just took a name that I like, and what I did, what I did was. Uh, what I did was my grandmother on my mother's side, she was the only person who really got me as a child. I was always different from everyone, and she
Mm-hmm.
got me. And she was my support. And her maiden name was Reed. And I liked it because it was short and simple. I was tired of having a name nobody could pronounce and everybody was asking me about. And then my sister, she calls me April, and she asked me if I would put that in somewhere.
Oh,
And I said, okay, I'll put it in the middle. I don't exactly feel like that now. So I didn't want
yeah.
it like
Yeah.
my first name, but I don't mind the name. Her daughters call me that,
Mm.
I'm their aunt. And then the first name, this is really weird how that one came about. So I write these get out the vote postcards,
Yeah.
thousands of them, and we didn't want to write my name. So I started writing anything, like sign them anything I wanted. And I
Yeah.
started writing Lana, Lana. Oh, that's nice and short. I like it. Lana Turner was a movie
Yeah.
star. Yeah, I like that name. And I just I started signing it that. And then when I thought about changing my first name, I was like, oh, I really like Lana. I'm just going to do that. And I don't care if people call me Lana or Lana. I
Yeah.
don't mind how it's pronounced. I think in my mind, because I'm from Pittsburgh, I
It's
have a
Lana.
Pittsburgh
Yeah.
accent. It's like Lana,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
I don't mind. I don't care. And so that's how the name came to be. And I just got my social security card last
Mm.
week. So now begins the process of changing everything, credit
Everything.
cards,
Yeah.
my driver's license, and go to the bank. But it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
giving it this year to make a transition, the whole
Beautiful.
year. I don't
Yeah.
care if people call me Shakta. That
Yeah.
I sometimes don't even notice what they call me if they called me
Yeah.
Dr. Lana or whatever.
Yeah.
We're all just getting used to it. So that's that. Yeah.
I'm so interested in this idea of what do we do with the teachings when the teacher is abusive or corrupt? I mean, because at this point now, so many of the lineages that I have loved that have been such a path of my like healing and wholeness have this abuse and disruption. It's so painful. I think about this all the time. What does integrity look like? What does discernment look like? What do we do? I mean, when this came up with Shambhala, after the Ashtanga, it had happened in Ashtanga and it happened in Shambhala, and I just felt like so uprooted, and I like immediately got all my Shambhala publication books and put them in free libraries and gave them away. Like I needed them out of the house. And so I have the tendency to just throw everything out. And then I'm just like, where do we land with some of these amazing teachings? Like Satanama. I mean, it's such a part of my pregnancy, of little Om yoga. I mean, it was such a part of raising my children. It's been such a beautiful connection. So like, where are you with all of that? The teachers and the teachings and the gifts, but then the human that brought it forward
Yes.
has the shadow.
What I see people doing who want to stick with it is they're finding other reasons for it. They're finding more ancient
Mm,
reasons for it. Or
mm,
they're, for example, we are offering a course about how the Chinese meridians work
mm,
with yoga, and it's mostly Kundalini yoga.
yeah,
So people are finding other reasons when they
yeah,
want to continue it. Um, I see my husband doing that to some degree, and I also see him freeing himself up to add in things he wants and mix it up a little bit.
yeah.
And for me, I have taught very little Kundalini yoga since this time, but I taught a women's yoga
Mm,
class, and it's based on my women's yoga book, and it
mm-hmm,
has
mm-hmm. Oh, I
Kundalini
love
yoga in
that
it.
book. Yeah,
So what I did
yeah,
was I just felt it. I felt it. What feels
yeah,
okay to
yeah,
do? It's mostly how it
yeah,
feels.
yeah,
And it felt okay to me to do Satanama. But what I told people was, because it was all on video and I didn't even know these people. I didn't know if they would like to say a mantra. So I just
yeah,
said, you can either say these sounds, and I said what they mean. It's like the circle of life,
yeah,
infinity,
yeah,
life, death, rebirth, or you can just breathe with it.
yeah.
And I just said that. Now, if I was a real Kundalini yogi, I would never say you can just breathe with it.
Right,
So
right,
I'm kind of
right,
I kind of
right.
give space to it. There's a cool yoga set that I like a lot, but there were some parts of it that were moving too fast, and I thought, oh, this doesn't work for my knees. I'm just going to slow the whole thing down, and
Beautiful.
even I
Yeah,
might even leave this part out. And
yeah,
it's you're supposed to chant har har har, and I was like, well, ha in because I teach qigong. Ha is
yeah,
the heart sound.
yeah,
We can do ha, or we can just breathe, or
yeah.
they if they want to do harder, fine. So I was sort of giving a lot more space when I was teaching
Yeah,
anything that had
yeah,
Kundalini yoga according to how it felt for me.
yeah.
So
I
I
love
think
that.
it has to go by how you feel. And there are some things I just will not teach because they remind me too much
Yeah,
of the sort of macho Kundalini yoga
yeah,
style.
yeah,
Arms up, fingers
yeah,
up, breath
yeah,
of fire, keep up.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
no, that hasn't been my style for a while, but now I'm like really, I find it really repulsive. And maybe some other
yeah.
people don't.
You know
So,
what's so interesting? I just want to loop back to something you said earlier on the what if game. I always love,
yeah.
like, I think of it as what if up. So it's like instead of what if like down or what if negative, it's like what if up, like what if it like lifts you up or what if the thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? Since we're talking, the dismantling and the destruction of the abuse in a lot of the lineage that I loved for so long actually brought me home to my Judaism,
Aha.
because I was releasing those identities and like noticing and discerning. But I long for ritual and ceremony and singing and dancing. Like that's just in my bones. I was
Mm.
able to turn towards Judaism, which is my lineage and path, and go home to her and find her. And
Oh.
so like my what if up for the dismantling and the heartbreak of that. I have a lot of kapha, so I like to hold on to the sadness and weep and be like, but there was the good old days, but like releasing that to be like, but I found this feminine form, Kohenet Judaism, where I'm Shamira and I get to like weave my
Ah.
priestessing, and like that
Wow.
is so thank you for that, like looping all of that, because
I
it's,
got a feeling about that when you said Shamira. Woo.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so you named Abraham Bashar, is that
Bashar.
Bashar,
Yeah.
Byron Katie, um,
Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle, and 3HO, which have all in the past year had a lot of alignment with conspiracy theories
Oh, really?
and
See, I'm out of touch with that.
QAnon and
Even Eckhart Tolle?
I would not so much
Because
him,
that's about presence.
not so much him personally, but
Oh,
he is thrown into people who follow
got it.
him
Got it.
are in that. And so what I really want to hone in on in this last part of our
Yeah.
chat is this activism. You still seem extremely grounded in reality around racism and activism as a real thing. And a lot of the teachers that you name that you follow have students who are saying those things are not real. So I really need to hear,
Oh.
because you are so interesting that you're not sharing QAnon related information.
Well, let's see. I am a very practical minded person and I see racism. And I, I don't, I think we have to really pay attention to what our mind is doing. If our mind is latching on to some of these conspiracy things, I would use some of the tools that I have. Like, I'm just trying to think of how that is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what inside of me is making it so I think this could be accurate? What inside of me is making it me think that Democrats um, are pedophiles? Uh, then I question that, and that is actually, in some ways, Byron Katie's work. So I don't see how it got so twisted. But um, to me, it's all about being present to myself, noticing sensations, understanding that I do have true guidance. I know what it feels like, and I know when it's fake guidance or not even. It has a little feel to me like that's not quite right. Nah, that can't be it. Go deeper. What is happening here? What insecurity do I have that's making me think this is true? There's When people don't know themselves, they latch on to things. I think it's a lot of that is going on, and they might have a big fuss about what I'm saying, but that's to me is where it's at. Because if I truly go to a place inside of myself where I know and feel, and I have that inner sense of knowing, it has integrity. Integrity means it works. It works in the world. It works. If I feel like I'm white and um, and I have a friend who is black, and I don't go enough into understanding her experience of life, then that doesn't have integrity. So to me, it's partly common sense. And I think so many people are not getting, well, okay, so the whole mask thing, like, I have friends on who question the mask, wearing a mask. Well, that's common sense. The mask is going to help me to not spread. And I've even seen videos where they are in a science laboratory and they show these aerosol particles that happen between people. So somebody could say, oh, well, that's fake news. Well, goodness, we know there's science. We know that we know these things exist. And so if I wear a mask, I'm protecting the other person, and I'm also hopefully protecting me too. And if I stay far enough away from them, that makes sense too. So I just feel like I don't want to get into a conspiracy theory about this, but they all kind of fit together. All of their things sort of fit together in a way that's not very empowering to anyone, not even the person thinking them. They might think that they're being empowered, but it doesn't feel empowered. It feels like I'm only empowered if I push against that person. And my activism, sometimes it's easy to get into that too, where it's like an us against them thing. And I have felt that because, as I said, my MO oftentimes is anger.
Anger. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not grief and it's
Yeah.
not sadness. It's not
Yeah.
depression.
Yeah.
So when I go into something like that, I know I'm not really balanced. So if I go
Hmm.
like, oh, those damn Trump supporters,
Yeah. Right. Right.
I sometimes I have to just get it out that way.
Yeah.
But I know
Yeah.
that that's not really where I want to be at. I
Yeah.
would like to be able to say hello to my neighbor who
Yeah.
has a big Trump sign in front of
Yeah.
their house. And
Yeah.
I do sometimes, but I have to work with that within myself.
Yeah.
So, but I don't really feel it like an us against them. I feel like there'll always going to be some people who have these other ways of looking at things, and that's just
Yeah.
part of life. And I'm not
Yeah.
going to try to
Yeah.
convert people. But what I want to do is make good things happen in our country. And I do feel like
Yeah.
if good things happen for some of the people that are in the QAnon, maybe they'll see that good things are happening for them.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, did
it's okay.
something happen?
No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
okay. It was like a Siri thing. She jumped in. She said, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. So we know that goddess energy is with us because she wants to say, I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
Very
I
good.
love
Very
it,
good.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to really name that I have seen a lot of bypass
Mhm.
in using spirituality as a way to bypass some of the realities of the human experience that we are also having. And I don't see a difference between justice and spirituality, like the intersection of it for
Yeah.
me. If we're elevating humanity and kindness and compassion, for me, it's so looped in. And so it's really hard for me to separate that, but I don't see that necessarily being sort of the norm in the mainstream. I'm seeing more and more bypass using things like, well, your thoughts create your reality, so you're creating racism. Really taking
Huh.
one line of something and
Yes.
then building a whole case rather than doing that essential, let's look at the nuance, let's look at the history of the humans, like bypassing the human experience. So that's what I just so deeply respect about you is I've just watched you online have that same passion of intersection and not be able to separate it. And I think I've just noticed that not always being the case.
I agree.
Yeah.
I I think that when Donald Trump got elected, it served on a big level to wake up a lot of people, including me.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if I was going to say there's a positive to that,
Yeah.
that's probably what I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
And what I have learned from that is that when I have a lot of fire in me, I can harness that and I can use it for good. And so
Yes.
that's been very,
Yeah.
very helpful to me.
Yeah.
And when I can look back at my faulty thinking from before, which was, oh, okay, we don't have to have anything to do with politics because,
Mm.
it'll all work itself out. Who cares? Whatever.
Mm.
I was a little more like that, even though I always voted. I never did anything more than that. But now I see that, oh, we actually
Yeah.
can make a difference.
Yeah.
And we in Northern Virginia, in our
Yeah.
VA 10, that was a real authentic show for me of how it works because we had Barbara Comstock.
Mm-hmm.
She voted 97% of the time with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
We would every Tuesday do a protest in front of her office out on Route 7. We would go to her office and ask questions. We basically harassed her out
Yeah.
of office. Of course, we didn't do it
Yeah.
all, but we
Yeah.
helped,
Yeah.
and that's why I love Indivisible. And I wanted more
Yeah.
people who feel helpless
Yeah.
to know about that and to know that there's an organized way we can work
Yeah.
together. And I feel very happy in it. And so when
Yeah.
I feel a true happiness,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
something's being done and accomplished, I know I'm on the
Mm.
right path.
Yeah.
But if I'm just in QAnon and I'm saying like, oh, those Democrats are like
Yeah.
pedophiles and things, I don't think that makes me feel very much happiness. Maybe
Ah,
I feel self-righteous.
yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I feel like it's us against them, but it's not like a true feeling of
Mm.
integrity and happiness. So
Mm.
I think it's all depends on deep present moment awareness and not fooling ourselves.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, Lana, what are you offering now? Where can people find you? I just had an idea. I'm going to
Oh,
run
okay.
by you and you'll see how it feels. Because I heard you say you're teaching something called Happily Ever Now.
Yes.
And I want to hear more about that. And I'm hoping that at some point, maybe you'll teach that for our community and that we can join that.
Oh,
Because
I
that
would
has
love
been
to.
something our community has been asking for, is kind of, it's so funny this came up. We had someone last week on talking about developmental aging, and like the stages of adult development. And she said, you all need to find an elder in your community who's had a long marriage and have her teach a class for you on how to move through the stages. And then this week you
Oh.
just said, I'm teaching something called Happily Ever Now. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. So anyway, so tell everyone who's listening where they can
Yeah.
find you, what you're offering, and how they
Okay.
can learn from you.
Well, we're all online now, which
Mhm.
is fine. It's
Yeah.
actually working out great. And the Happily Ever Now, I'll just start with that. It's a class that I put together out of my own joy of the changes that happened for me between around 2001 and
Mhm.
2008,
Mhm.
and all the materials and helper teachers that I use. And when I say teachers, most of them are things I learned from books, but
Yeah.
not all.
Yeah.
And it's like it's always now. So how can we be happily in this ever now? And
Mm.
I don't mean happily in a fake way, like
Yeah.
happily like
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, we're not going to look at this because that doesn't make me happy. No, it
Yeah.
makes you happy if you look at what you don't like
Yeah.
and you really allow it to
Yeah.
speak to you.
Mhm.
That will bring you happiness, not pushing it away and say, oh no, I need to be
Yeah.
happy now,
Yeah.
let me do my positive affirmations.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
happily ever
Yeah.
now. And so this work is about being present to ourselves and
Yeah.
um, really truly having integrity with that. I love that course. It's my favorite one to teach. It's coming up online in April,
Okay.
and it's part of our family yoga series, which now Radiant Child is. Um, what happened with Radiant Child was we work with children, but then we saw that we were actually working with the adults. So we started
Yeah.
working with the adults in a more deep way.
Yeah.
Either they're teachers or they were parents or whatever.
Yeah.
And now we have a whole 200-hour that's focused on babies all the way through elders. So it's a
Beautiful.
way of for it's for everyone in the family. And
Yeah.
so that series is online now every single month.
Beautiful.
And the nice thing is you don't have to be in our 200-hour. You can just take it as a workshop.
Okay.
You know, you can take and we have one for ADHD, which is very, very well done. I've learned a lot from my trainers, and
Yeah.
especially a lot from the ones who are OTs and PTs.
Yeah.
Really
Beautiful.
tremendous amount of crossover between the yoga, the
Hmm.
mindfulness, and the OT PT
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
So,
And it's all at
okay. Oh,
radiantchild.com.
yeah, it's you can put Radiant Child in, but my actual name of the website is childrensyoga.com.
Oh, right.
And I also want to mention I will have a new website soon. I'm very excited about because I'm in
Yay.
my elder years now and I'm retired, semi-retired. And I have a new website called Poetry Movement,
Mm,
and it's all the poetry that I've written since the 70s. I've been
mm,
writing poetry off and on, and it will also have qigong. Qigong is my new love. I teach qigong every Wednesday night
okay.
online, and families can come at a very discounted rate, and it's already a very low rate. But the reason why
Mhm.
families can come cheaper is because I want to learn what teens and preteens like about qigong, and so I'm encouraging preteens and teens to come
Mm.
to that. And so I'm excited about my new website, and I am just the spotlights on the trainers now. They're
Yeah.
teaching quite a lot of
Yeah.
the
And you have
trainings.
amazing teachers. I mean,
I
they
know,
all
I'm
used to
so
come to the
blessed.
National Kids Yoga Conference, and I've
Yeah,
become friends with so many of them. And what an incredible, you really attract the most amazing, amazing humans who are continuing to bring forth your work and create. So, really
I
honoring
am
you.
very blessed that way, and I've
Yeah.
learned something about how to do that. There's a way of going inside and feeling what the
Mm.
vibration of the work is, the energy of the
Mm.
work is, and then imagining that those that are on that wavelength will find it,
Mm.
because of that. So it's tuning in a deep way to this, the wavelength of it, the energy of it, and then just trusting that people who are on that wavelength will find it. And we work with the trainers, all work that way with it, and we all work that way with bringing people in who are the right people. So
This was so much fun. Thank you so much
it was
for
so
all
much
of
fun
your
for me too.
wisdom. Oh, I just could
Thank
sit and
you.
like keep talking, and I feel I've been drawn in. I circled qigong Wednesdays with with my almost teenager, and I just feel like here's to many more collaborations and
Thank
creations.
you.
I can't wait to check out Poetry Movement, and you are just such a gift. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pleasance. I loved speaking with you. We're on
Mm.
the wavelength.
Honestly.